Hey guys, how you doing? It's Istvaan here. So, carrying on with starting a 30k series. So, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Death Guard lore. I do apologise, there's been a bit of a delay since the videos, because I've basically been trying to figure out what is going on here. There's not that many videos out there on Death Guard lore when it comes to the legions. Which is kind of a good opportunity for me to try and put something in place for it. So, now this is basically this is from my own knowledge of the Black Library books and from the Forge World books that give me this. So, a little bit of a caveat, there will be things I get wrong, there will be different opinions, everyone's got it, you know. You take the usual pinch of salt with it at the end of the day. That things will be different, you might interpret them differently, but I'm just going on what I've read, so, and how I've interpreted it. So, Death Guard. Let's have a look into this weird little world that Death Guard are. So, the Death Guard started off as, they are the 14th Legion, just so you're aware. They started off not called the Death Guard. They started off being called the Dusk Raiders. Now, the Dusk Raiders, they've got their own little story as well, which I'll tell you a little bit about. Now, the Dusk Raiders came from a part of Terra, if I get my words properly, called Old Albia. Now, why I'm telling you about this goes back to the Unification Wars. Old Albia was the biggest rival towards the Emperor, as a sort of mass body that could rival the Emperor in regards to unification for Terra. So the Dusk Raiders mainly stemmed from this group. They're basically techno-barbarians, techno-warlords and stuff like that. They would battle against the Emperor using like proto-dreadnoughts and sort of enhanced techno-barbarians and all kinds of crazy manner of stuff against the Emperor's Thunder Warriors. But the Emperor basically saw that having a war with these guys, it's just going to be really costly, really timely. It's just going to delay everything a lot, and I'm going to lose loads of resources doing it. So, he offered a truce to them. And what he said was basically, okay, right, I don't want to fight you. So, instead, how about you signed with me, and you guys can conquer the stars. So, everyone, loads of people in there, I don't know what they were called, all these techno-barbarians and stuff, but a lot of people didn't want it to happen, but the warlords said, yeah, right, okay, yeah, we'll go conquer the stars. So the Emperor then started recruiting from Old Albia, and the sort of basically started picking all the best warriors and everything like that out of Old Albia. Now, kind of, it works in two folds, this thing. It's quite clever, because what he was doing is basically siphoning off all the best warriors from it to join his army, and secondly, it starts indoctrinating everyone into the Emperor's fold. So after a few years, maybe a few hundred years, a few decades, so I don't know, the old people would have sort of died, and everyone gradually moves on a little bit until the point where, you know, everyone's in the Emperor's army. Hey! So now some recruits from Old Abbey also got recruited into the 8th Legion and the 10th Legion as well, but not as many as the Dusk Raiders, which is the 14th. So so the Dusk Raiders in themselves are a little bit different towards the Death Guard. The Dusk Raiders were quite honourable. They they followed a war of attrition and endurance, and they're basically people, they would just endure everything, and they would crush people if they need to. They called the Dusk Raiders because they mainly attacked at dusk to confuse everyone because the light's shifting and everything like that. And it also looked like a shadow was coming across, so people would get scared and just give up before it even happened. But the Dusk Raiders were also known as quite honourable as well, so when they got into the point where they were doing a great crusade, they would go out into the stars, other human planets. They would potentially make bargains with them and stuff like that, and they would hold to it, and they would stick true, and they're like, okay, well, yeah, that's fine, if you join the Imperium and everything like that, it's cool, you hold your end of the bargain, we'll leave you alone, sort of thing. There goes the phone. But if anyone broke their promises, they would just crush them. There goes the phone again. So yeah, they would basically, you hold your end of the bargain, or we're going to decimate you. It was kind of their thing. So you can make a deal with them, but they wouldn't allow degenerates, they wouldn't allow Xenos, and they wouldn't allow mutants. They just literally annihilated them. There was kind of like no holding back with those guys. So no bargains, no nothing. So the Dusk Raiders as well basically had grey armour, apart from their right gauntlet, van brace and shoulder guard, so basically their right arm effectively was red with deep crimson colour. And that was the Dusk Raiders for you. And yeah, they were kind of well known, well respected, and yeah, so be it. Then we have to move on to Mortarion. I kind of didn't really want to go into Mortarion's story because other people have done it, but I'll tell you a little bit about it from my perspective and what it is. So Mortarion landed on Barbarus. Barbarus is a death world, kind of like a toxic place, and there was the biggest lord of this toxic place is like techno barbarian. Apparently he's like 3 times the size of a man or something like that, something crazy. He basically found Mortarion, and he was a baby, and he wasn't dead in all the toxic fumes, and he was just like, okay, I'm going to take this guy, and raise him as mine. So he raised Mortarion, and basically kind of educated it, schooled him, kind of trapped him as well, kept him in like a big castle monolith in the cloud top. So what they had is kind of like mountains, and all the poisonous fumes were up in these mountains and stuff like that, so they kind of kept people in there. So they would come down and like slaughter people just for fun, and they would take them, and they were kind of like the fuel. As far as I understand it, all these people they killed were kind of fuel, and they were used as resources basically. But if they ever got in trouble, they just retreat back up into the toxic clouds. People couldn't follow them because they just die. So basically, all in all, stuff happened. Mortarion escaped, and he found the normal people there, and he kind of befriended them, and he started learning. And one day, I think a fight was happening, a load of Xenos were going to kill him. Mortarion stepped in with a scythe and just massacred them all. This kind of gave everyone a little bit of hope. Mortarion started understanding things, and he basically started developing into a man. So he started understanding technology, so he started creating armour, weapons, rebreather masks to be able to cope with the toxic fumes and stuff like that. He started rallying people together, picking out the best people, schooling them in the arts of war, training them up effectively, and he basically picked some of the best guys. Well, basically he went on little raids and stuff like that, started fighting back, and Mortarion started winning a lot. But there were a lot of these overlords, and as I said, basically when they got in trouble they just retreated into the clouds. So Mortarion basically picked some of his best guys and just clad them all in armour, like full metal clad, and developed rebreather masks for them, and they became the first Death Guard. So the first Death Guard went out with him, and they managed to start killing these overlord guys, conquering them and moving on. So what they would do, I mean, this would take years and years, and they said this like took decades basically. but they would isolate one of them, chop him down, and then move on to the next one. So it became very relentless in the way they did things. It took a while, but they didn't really stop, basically. It got to the point where it's just the last one left, who was his old adopted dad, sort of thing. And Mortarion tried to fight him, the guy retreating to the top. Mortarion can get to him. He then came back down, and the Emperor was there. And Mortarion and the Emperor didn't really see eye to eye, as far as it puts it in the books. Didn't really trust each other. Well, Emperor kind of trusted him, Mortarion didn't like him back, sort of thing. But the Emperor made a deal with Mortarion. He said, okay, well, if you can go up there, kill your dad, on your own, I'll leave you alone. I'll just move on. I won't do anything, and this is all yours. But if you fail, I'll kill him for you, and you have to serve me. So, kind of see where this is going. Basically, Mortarion goes wandering up, gets up into the clouds and everything like that. All his respirator, rebreathe, everything just starts melting. Apparently his lungs start melting, all kinds of stuff, and he's like dropping to his knees. Adopted dad comes out of the mist about to kill him. Lo and behold, shiny gold man, the Emperor, steps out and just butchers the guy. So, then Mortarion has to serve fealty to the Emperor. After he's gotten better, he bends the knee. And then you have the Primarch of the Death Guard. So he then gets assigned to the Dusk Raiders. So, pretty quickly, the Dusk Raiders were changed to the Death Guard. That was like pretty much a quick thing. They say in the records that they don't really know a lot about what happened. They don't really understand what kind of changes were done in the first bit. One thing they did say with the Dusk Raiders, what they did is the Dusk Raiders tooled up their troopers for all unforeseen circumstances. So they would tool them up as much as they could, like loads of extra ammo, all different weapons and stuff like that. So each person could carry on fighting, regardless of. And they said the Death Guard was kind of an extension onto that, basically. It followed the same kind of logic, but they pushed them even further. So they said a lot of the stuff, like the librarians, got shunned off. They didn't like doing that. The Death Guard themselves, they were trained to do everything. So a tactical trooper would be a trooper. He would be a support trooper, heavy weapons expert, special weapons expert. The Death Guard were trained up to do everything, basically. The Mortarion's effort was like, you're all one, and because they had such a high turnover of staff, i.e. legionaries, they kind of needed to do that, so people would die quite a lot, and they're like, you're going over there, you go to, and they keep on getting shuffled around. So this comes and leads us on to the Death Guard's way of war. So, Death Guard's way of war is they start specialising in close combat, so melters, flamers, stuff like that. That was kind of like their epicenter. But they also started, Mortarion liked using rad weaponry, because he basically said, I don't care how I win, I need to win, and I need to... they didn't like overlords, so they liked overthrowing overlords. So whatever they had to do, they would do it. Now these guys would get thrown into the most hostile environments, and what you would find is, like some death worlds, like a human could only last a couple of minutes on the death world before he just started coughing up blood. For a space marine, it might have been like an irritation, or just like made him a bit groggy or something like that. Apparently if you threw the Death Guard on there, it didn't even affect them at all. They just didn't care. So they would get thrown into the most hostile, chemical, rad-infested environments, and they would just deal with it and just trudge along. And yeah, they would use any kind of weaponry they wanted to. They would get shuffled around to wherever they needed to be. And Mortarion was quite often a field commander of the Legion, and he didn't like separating up the Legion, so the Legion would act as one most of the time. So when it came to stuff like Istvaan III, the Death Guard turned up, and nearly the entire Legion was there. So like, we all operate as one, so therefore we're all there. We'll get on to Istvaan III though. So, in regards to the heraldry and stuff like of the Death Guard, obviously they changed the icon. There is an icon for the Dusk Raiders. A little bit different, a little bit ominous even. And what their mentality was with, they didn't adorn themselves, so they didn't put kill rankings or ranks of honor or anything like that on their armor. What they said is, as long as the armor is still functional and it hasn't been compromised, every scar of battle is part of the adornment. That is it. So that's why Death Guard are dirty and scratched up all the time. They're basically like, that's their mark of battle. They just don't clean their armor because that's the honor of it, in a weird sense. So maybe they just don't like cleaning, but hey ho. So the Death Guard have this very stalwart endurance, and they rely heavily on the assault troops. So you're talking like excess amounts of Terminators, reinforced armor, basically. They would just basically endure more than other legions, or however other legions would adapt. So like Raven Guard would use stealth and tactics and stuff like that. White Scars would do hit and run tactics. Ultramarines would probably outmaneuver or something like that. I don't know. But Death Guards would literally just trudge through it and smash through, because that's just what they did. Now, when it came to Legion disposition, I was a bit shocked at this. When Mortarion took over, everyone was a little bit like, how's he going to work this? And it says that basically he split the Legion up into 7 great companies, and each great company was 70,000 Marines. So that's 490,000 Space Marines. I was like, nah, they didn't have that many. Ultramarines only had 250,000. And they basically said that was Mortarion's aim, but because the turnover was so rapid that he never reached that, he said they never really got to that strength. They said when they got to about Istvaan III, they were about 95,000. So still a lot, a hell of a lot of stuff. But yeah, the plan was to be nearly 500,000 Space Marines, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, they just died they died too much. But yeah, this is the interesting thing, because Death Guard seemed to be this very I don't really know the word for it, but a kind of half biological essence. They would all maneuver and act as one, basically, and they would adapt and thing. Whereas Ultramarines, the squads would split off and be tactical and stuff like that. All of the Death Guard could operate and do all the roles and stuff like that. What it says as well is apparently most of the guys from Barbarus that were indoctrinated became like the troopers, the guys in Terminator, and all the main like foot sloggers, and all the town guys just got put in the tanks. So it just became all the support crews and stuff like that. So that was kind of an interesting little thought that they showed on that. So the Death Guard, they've got more depth to it than I originally thought at the present moment in time. There's definitely some more to them. It says basically from onlookers looking at rivalries in Legion, they said they never really saw much rivalry between all the legionaries. Unlike other legions like Night Lords, where people would, in Space Wars, where they would fight each other quite regularly just for whatever. They said with Death Guard they didn't notice it. They didn't understand it, and also if the commander or the squad sergeant died, the next in line would take his place pretty much instantly, and there was no transition, there was no thought or process or anything, or not unsurety. They would just step and move and just carry on moving. They said on their rights to war, or when they made war and stuff like that, when the Legion was moving, they never stopped. They never really made camp anywhere to resupply. I think they resupplied on the move, so they just kept on moving. They didn't move at a massively fast pace, but they just kept on moving. And this is kind of like the whole theme of the Death Guard. They just keep going, and they just keep on trudging through everything. They are just tough, and they endure pretty much everything. So, as you know, they're kind of in this rad environment. They start using all this chem weapons and stuff like that. And Mortarion is just basically the, apparently Corax and Gilliman both said to the Emperor at some point, like, we don't really trust this guy, you know? The Emperor's like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, and apparently Mortarion only had friends with Kurz and Horus. So I'm like, okay, so everyone loves Horus, and Kurz is a psychopath. So it's kind of interesting knowing someone that liked talking to a psychopath. Generally, I find that quite interesting. I'd be kind of interested to hear those two talk. In regards to what happened at Istvaan III, though, it does mention that nearly like a third of the Legion got dropped onto Istvaan III. Mainly the Terrans, a couple of the Barbarans. They don't know if there was a reason for the Barbarans to say, look, we are making sacrifices. It's not just all the Terrans we're sending down there, so we had to make some sacrifices. Or Mortarion just didn't trust them. It's not really said, but it said mainly principal elements for the 2nd, 5th and 7th Great Companies, detachment of Legion Fellblades and siege gear were dropped onto the planet. They do say, though, on Istvaan III, the Death Guard were the Legion that survived the most out of the virus bombing and the bombardment afterwards. So it goes as a bit of a credibility to them that even after all of that, the Death Guards were still the ones that survived the most out of all of that. So, there's other stuff in regards to it. I mean, they said basically everyone kind of, as I said, I've been mentioning, everyone operates at once. There was only a few different things where you'd be specialist tech marines or apothecaries or something like that. Would you be separate from the main core of the Legion, where you were expected to do anything at that point in time? So it's generally an interesting thing. They also said they quite heavily used Vindicators and Fellblades, so that's a thing. I didn't know that, but yeah, the rest of it, they relied more on infantry units and heavy foot guys rather than tanks and everything. They did use everything else because he's like, I'm not going to leave all my guys in the dirt, but we're mainly going with Terminators and Dreadnoughts and stuff like that, so fair play. And that's pretty much it on regards to the Death Guard. There's more stuff on the internet, to be honest with you. You can probably find it. To be honest with you, if you want to learn more yourself, go get the books or read. Look on Wikipedia. Everything's going to show you something a little bit different at the end of the day, so take it all with a pinch of salt and make up your own mind about how you want to view them. At the end of the day, you got 95,000 Space Marines you can play with, so, and I'm sure they got a fair amount of toys. So if you want to play them a particular way, I'm pretty sure you can do. 95,000 Space Marines. So yeah. Right. I'm going to wrap that one up. I'm sure I haven't covered some bits and bobs. There's a lot to cover, to be honest with you. Unless I read it word for word, but I'm not that good at doing, yes, and they did this, and I don't have that voice actor tone and stuff like that, so I'm not going to try. But I'm sure some of you got comments, stick them down below. I'm sure some of you probably disagree. Again, stick them in the comments below. If you've got any advice on any other places to get fluff and information, not actual real fluff, I don't mean go, like, say I've got fluff in my pockets or something like that, because that's just dumb. But, yeah, if any of you know where to get more kind of stories on the Death Guard or other legions, that'd be great. I'll move on to Mortarion in the next video, so you can see his rules, see what he does and stuff like that. And then I need to choose the next legion, so if you guys can get your thoughts brewing on that, and if you have any ideas, stick them in the comments below. It'd be nice to know. And it is basically a case of most votes wins, really. So you guys pick the next legion and we will have a look at it. So I've been Istvaan. Thank you very much for watching. Take it steady, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.